that, I'll stand up for a second.
Yeah.
So I'm John Perry. I'm going to do this in about half an hour, and I'm going to present it like just these are my opinions. So it's not so much, it's derived from my experience, but if anything is in it that's of interest to you, I do webinars and I do live presentations for free. So if you want to find out more detail, you can always do a webinar, which are more like 45 minutes an hour long, with the presentations 90 minutes. So I'm just going to go through the really big picture of what I've learned from doing 3 startups myself in computer software, marine biotechnology and automotive technology, and helping others and raise the money and sell the products and so on, and helping other people to do the same. And what the core thing that I've worked out, that Athora asked me to come and have a quick presentation about, because to me it's actually the key of doing it all. And I guess you guys are all, assume you guys are all aspiring to do. Is everyone aspiring to do
Great things in the world.
We all aspire to
change
too
the
many
world in
things.
some way? Yeah.
Yes.
So you need resources and people and money and so on. Okay, great. So it's about my definition of be the power is having a big idea, being driven and drawn to something, to have something happen, and then the self-accountability. They're the 3 areas I've worked in. I just told you: automotive technology, the marine biotechnology also turned into a tourism venture as well, and learning technology. So when I did the automotive technology business, one of the people involved was Peter Brock, and he wrote me that on a table napkin, and it started me off thinking. But it took me a while to get the full impact of that, because basically this is the core problem that I'm talking about today solving, is that we don't actually know what we want very often. We don't go there and look very hard, and if we do, then we don't follow through. And this is what I've learned myself, and I've learned working with a lot of people. That's why I say perspective is so critical in terms of making something happen. I went on to become a poet, and I'm back in doing my own another tech startup as a co-founder right now. So that wraps up me. Basically, this is the premise of the next few minutes we're together, is that money flows to the most investable people, not the best ideas, or at least it's equal. But I would say, from my experience, it's about 70% weighting towards money being invested in people more so than ideas. And the problem with that is that we're not brought up, educated, or trained in any way, and society is not helping us to see that we're valuable. We're seen as what do you do is valuable, or what your profession is valuable, or what your skill is valuable. So we don't really look terribly hard at what's invaluable, what makes that, to me, a truism, which is people invest in people. And a couple of case studies there. So from my experience working with angel investors, with the head of Melbourne Angel Investor Investment Committee, he came to one of my board meetings that I had, groups like this, but I bring professionals and other people together to help with the wherewithal, all the nuts and bolts. And one of the guys asked him, what's the most important thing? How do you make a decision? And he said, in the end, when they've done their due diligence, they've gone through and looked, they might have 2 or 3 for the 3-month budget that they've got, their investment budget. And he said, the person we invest in is the one who's asking most enthusiastically. so that in the end it's the person that makes the difference there. And the other example is I've heard this one said as well by a Melbourne incubator when they were onboarding their intake. They said to a couple of guys, the intake team said to a couple of guys, well, we don't like your project, but we like you, so come on board and we'll help you find a project. So if it's not about your idea, your skill set, your presentation skills, what is it about? And it's what I've found is if you focus on the wrong things, you very soon hit your achievement ceiling, because your skill set and your capabilities will hit a ceiling, but your personal investability will break through. So that's why we say the smart money looks at you before they look at the business proposition. But more than that, and this is a really important distinction, people invest time, people invest resources. So for example, when you're starting something up, someone comes along and says, I'll give you a hand with that. And they may not even put their hand out for money to do it initially, if you've got something they're really interested in. As an example for skills and resources, the new tech startup we're doing, we're just building the prototype. And we've had someone who's interested in it invest their resources. So we've got office space and we've got a whole lot of support that we're not having to pay for, which would otherwise cost us about $100,000 for the year. And reputation networks, that's pretty obvious. We need people to introduce us to investors and to other people. It's an investment of credibility, and then of course we do need money, obviously. And what I'm saying is that they're functions of respect and trust, because when you're actually onboarding in the early stages, it's about respect and trust, and you'll never get to trust unless people respect you. It works the other way around in social life. You meet someone, you like them, you might eventually trust them, and you might eventually respect them, or there's some sort of mix there. But in business, and when you're bringing people together, it's respect first. And it's structural. It's this is my point. It's not about personality or tricky conversation or charisma. It's actually structure, and this is what I'm just about to unpack. So internally for ourselves personally, to be someone who earns the respect and trust of our investors when they're investing time, skills, reputation, or money, is basically how we shape our internal perspective. So I'm saying, and this I'll go through this part without trying to prove anything or give you all the research or too many examples. And as I say, if you are interested in what I'm saying, there's more you can follow up with. Whoops, went the wrong way. Yeah, so I'm saying the structure is composed of you coming to a yes for yourself, you coming through choice, which we call your freedom, and you having an impact and having traction and having movement. Won't go through those details right now, I'll go through them as we go. So it's basically about, the core of it is about living from choice rather than living from what we're brought up to live from, obligation and fitting in, and how those insidious things are more prevalent in our life than we like to realise. Well, that's what I found anyway, not to put my personal experience onto you guys. So the first one, you're yes. So what I'm saying there is that it's really about trusting and respecting yourself first. If you want someone else to trust and respect you, you have to start with yourself. And again, that's not something that we're educated and brought up to think. it's basically that we learn to trust and respect authority and bodies of work and religious work or intellectual work or other people before ourselves. But until we trust and respect ourselves, we won't walk our talk, and then it's very hard for someone else to trust us, which in the end is the bottom line. And particularly, you know, you'll hear investors typically say that in the end they couldn't trust the person, couldn't get to know them, so they wouldn't invest. And I won't go into the details of this, but basically your energy signature is something that comes. We do a 3-hour exercise on that, which is it's basically someone coming to a point where it's really clear to them what their DPS is, and then what they're going to wrap all of their aspirations and all their endeavours in the world around. That gives them an identifiable. Very, very simply, it's about being seen to be on top of your emotional and mental game, so that someone can see you and see that you're real, see that you're walking your talk.
Did you say DPS? Did you say DPS? Did you use an acronym? TPS?
I said your energy signature.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which is like
DPS.
DPS, what's that?
You said an acronym.
Yeah.
And didn't clarify what it was.
Oh, DPS, did I?
Yeah. No, never mind. Maybe I heard it wrong. Yeah. I haven't, yeah.
I don't know what I said there.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said deepest. That's what I've got.
Deepest.
Okay. I
Okay.
want you to until it's there on this side.
Good pick.
Deepest.
Deepest. There you go. Thank you. So, just because this is the foundation of it, this is a 3 to 4 minute game. Are you up for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically to associate how much resistance there is to actually doing what we want or going for what we want. And this game I've played about probably 200, maybe 250 times, and it's pretty much the same output, and it's true for me as well. I've got a long story about how I didn't do a really great project, and someone else did it, and I kick myself all the time for not doing it. So the game goes like this. So is there something that you would have liked to have done, that you'd love to do, you'd like to see happen, or you've got a friend who's got a project they'd like to have done, they want to see it happen, but either you or your friend haven't done as much as you'd like to have done to make that happen. If that's the case, if you haven't done as much as you could do to make something happen that you'd like to see happen, put up your hand. Yeah. So most people do that at that point. So keep it up if that's been going on for, say, let's keep the exercise short, for say 3 months. 6 months?
The same thing.
Yeah, so if you haven't been doing as much as you could to get the thing happening that you'd love to have happen for 6 months, a year, right, so that's enough. So what's going on there? That's the thing. We can all, and you're very lucky, I can tell you. And there's always exceptions. So I'd say you're very lucky and very blessed. So what's going on there? Just take one or two. What's it like? Who wants to say what it's like to have not done what they wanted to do?
I think it's mostly competing priorities. I mean, you get, like, if you get a bunch of ideas and you like them all, really, it's like, which one do I have time to do? I don't.
Okay, so that's a function of being clear of what you'd really love to do. That's a good point.
Yeah, well, yeah, probably so.
It is, yeah, it's a lack of focus thing, isn't it? So, but you said, how do you feel about it? Of course, you feel frustrated, don't you? Or you feel.
Well, is that how you feel, or you just?
I'm just saying, it's natural to have some negative
Yes.
emotion. If I take the word frustrated to it.
There you go. There you go. So all that I want to do with this exercise is associate the internal cost of either not choosing one of them, which is completely normal. I mean, I have the same thing as as well. Or having one of them really clear and just not doing it, which was my case with another automotive project beyond the one that we did do, because it was in electric cars, and I didn't go ahead with it. So it's like what's his name? That fighter, famous fighter, kung fu fighter, said that Bruce Lee. When we resist doing what we want to do in one place of our life, we'll be doing it in other places. So I just want to say that in my experience, people not starting and not doing, even if you stop at a certain point, is the biggest contributor towards hitting your achievement ceiling that I've found. And that we do it in all aspects of our life. Because we're doing it one place, we'll be doing it in other places. And it's basically what I found, apart from making choices, which is a valid one, the other ones is that we're influenced by outside influences. I haven't got time, I haven't got the money, I haven't got whatever, rather than being internally motivated, internally directed. And then basically we don't do what we really love to do, and we tend to live from compensation rather than making a stand for the work that we really want to do. And we take away a lot of our power by doing that, and we aren't as confident as we could be. Because when you're really walking your talk and living from your energy signature and you're inspired, you're confident regardless of your resources, regardless of how good it's going. So the next one, your freedom, basically, that's really about self-accountability and playing to your strengths. So I'll just go through to because the point here for this one is when you play to your strengths, then you can onboard team members, early clients, investors, anyone investing in time, skill, reputational resources will be onboarded all the more readily if they can see that you're playing to your strengths. So the point about it is, what is it that stops us being self-accountable? And this is basically a chart about where we put our time and focus. Because if you look at what we choose, that's like on the way here I chose not to stop and have a coffee so I could be here on time. So we choose plenty of things not to do every day. And then we have choice about what we are doing in life, our major choices, our goals. And those two things take up our attention and our focus. But there's a lot of research to suggest that the largest part of our time and attention is focused unintentionally, that we repeat thoughts and behaviours, and that's where we bleed away our power and we bleed away our self-accountability. I've got an exercise on that which we won't do now, but you can audit over a period of time where you're spending your time and focus, and you'll be, when I was shown it and started doing myself, it's pretty scary. You note down how many times you think and say certain things, or go back to thinking something. And these are things where in the awareness world they're called your slave mind. Basically, they're the biggest contributor to your achievement ceiling, and they're the biggest contributor towards basically, if you do know what you love and want to do back in the first, in saying your yes, in coming to the why behind your why, you won't spend enough time to make it happen because you're spending your time habitually. it's really not living from choice. Your freedom is about living from choice. So it's a matter of focus. It's a matter of watching your focus, being your power, being attractive to other people to invest in is it's a function of what you're focusing on. Then your impact. So I was talking about how Bruce Lee talks about whatever you put limits on, you'll bring it into other parts of your life. And it mostly impacts on your enthusiasm and your direction if you put limits on yourself, and impacts on the impact you're going to be able to have. And that then, in terms of being attractive to investors, whether they're investing time, skills, reputational resources, is basically how much traction, how much movement forward you've got. And the effect on you is reducing your natural power, and it dulls your energy. So this is the chart which again we haven't got time to go into, but the three inhibitors that dull your energy and dull your impact the most are the ones in red on the right: defer, diffuse, and delay. If we won't go into it in great detail, but you basically if you look down the one, what's happening is you're trying to get it right because you need approval, either your own or other people's. You're telling a story about how things should be, or they're not the way they should be, or someone else should have done something. You're generally running a story about how bad it is for you, or even how good it is for you, and you're preparing, endlessly preparing rather than starting, and you just hinder your energy there. So these are things we won't go into, but you do need to overcome them at the deep core, or together with them. You're spending a huge amount of time in repetitive focus. You just don't have the power that you could have. And just so you know that, I won't go into it in detail, but just so you know that everybody, even massively successful people, if you look at the one compare, which is the top one in the middle, how to identify, Bill Gates says about himself that he found that he was comparing himself, especially in his early days, and he learned that when you compare yourself, to quote him exactly, you're insulting yourself. So these will bleed off your impact, and you really need to overcome them at their deep core, because otherwise you're whoops, we've gone the wrong way again. There we go. So because this impacts how much people want to work with you, play with you, and engage with you. If you're having an impact, people want to be around you. If you're going through life with that much impact, it's a lot harder to get people to come on board with you. So it's about follow through, basically. People need to see, investors need to see follow through, and that's a function of your impact. And it affects how people want to invest with you. And just on that point, look, we were having a quick chat just beforehand. It's about structure and perspective. It's like going up a lift a few, so we're looking here and we can't see out the window because there's a building, so we take the lift up to the next few floors and then we can see over the building. It's perspective, and these things I'm talking about, your yes, your freedom, your impact, are functions of your perspective, and they're structural. You can change your perspective. You have the capacity to change your perspective. I got this from early learnings from Buckminster Fuller, that everything, even our thoughts, can be looked at as a system. So what we think, what we believe, how we behave is part of a system, which I think the simplest way to put it for everyday language is our perspective. So summarising, it's to shape your perspective, to make your big idea happen, maintaining integrity rather than being having to give your integrity away, maybe be an arsehole if you think you have to do it by being an arsehole. It's basically about saying, well, whatever my perspective is, I can go up a few floors in a lift, change my structure to do what I need to do, because it's in all the work I've done building up the teams for the 3 businesses I grew up and then exited, and then working with about 40 other founders in the last couple of years, helping them do the same thing. It's about confidence, focus, and follow through. As at least half your investable equation when you're going for investment. You've got an investment equation essentially. Obviously, there's your product and service and hungry market. That's completely obvious. But what I'm conveying that I've learned is that investors look at you at least as much, even if it's only a third. You know, product, service, market, and you. It's a third of the equation at least. Very important to invest in yourself. So I'll leave you with this thought, which is a bit of a historical summary of what I'm trying to say, is that after the, particularly after the Industrial Revolution, but more particularly it was obvious after the Second World War, when they were rebuilding really large parts of the economies of the Western world anyway. It was typically how and what you did that you were valued for. And that's how we valued ourselves. And even today when you go out networking, someone says, what do you do? It's very early on that gets asked of you. Oh, sorry. What do you call it?
Siri?
Yeah, she came in.
Saying time's up, it's
Yeah,
28
answering
minutes.
a question.
Yeah.
Must have had a question and sounding voice. People will say to you, what do you do, really quickly. It's still prevalent and it's completely relevant, because if you say you're a doctor, or you say you're a tech, or you say a massage therapist, then it goes quite quickly to the how part, like how are you a doctor, or how are you, to get slightly more specific. And they're how you value yourself, quite rightly, and how you get valued by how and what you do. Still completely relevant, but then it moved to why, where Simon Sinek, we've all heard of, who talks about knowing your why. Does that ring a bell for everybody?
Yeah, start with the why.
Yeah, start
famous
with the why.
TED talk.
And he brought that in around, I think, late 90s, and that's going on, and that's highly relevant, and whole businesses exist on the basis of a why, like some of the outdoor clothing companies exist because they recycle all their products. Our 2 businesses to do with marine biotechnology, a lot of our investors came in the early stage because why we were doing it, apart from being profitable, was because we were reducing pressure on the sea stock and producing, which are being overfished, massively overfished, and we were producing protein for human consumption at less cost to the environment. And that's a big why for people. It was like, yeah, good thing to be doing. So why is very, very important, and it's one of the first places to look for investors, by the way, is people who get your why you're doing what you're doing. Is the big key there. But the point I'm making here, because when you're valuing yourself with your why, you're valuing yourself through the meaning of what you're doing. So first of all, you're valuing by how and what you're doing. Now you're valuing yourself through the meaning of what you're doing. So someone says, well, that's great, John. So I'm being valued through what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And this is the shift I'll leave you with, the who, which is really the why behind your why, like who, which is where you derive your power from, which is after all what everybody's actually looking for when they're investing, is you. They're looking for you. Are you going to follow through? Are you going to do it? Are you the one? And it's essentially going through the yes, the freedom, and your yes, your freedom, and your impact as expressions of your inherent value. And this is the last point I'll say, because that allows you to turn disadvantage into your advantage. And yeah, I said it the right way around. I thought I said it the wrong way around. Yeah, and how does that relate? How does that relate in the world we live in? That's called pivoting, right? You're down to your last 3 months of cash flow, your last month of cash flow. Like one of those collaborative snap or what's it called? Anyway, one of those ones like Trello that's gone ahead and raised huge amounts of money. They were failing in their actual main project, but what they'd done was they developed something to communicate within their office.
You're talking about Slack, I think.
Slack,
yeah.
Slack. And they pivoted with 3 months left of cash flow, and now it's a unicorn, it's worth more than $1 billion. So they turned disadvantage into an advantage. And how did they do that? It wasn't through resources, it wasn't through cash, it wasn't through investors, it wasn't through their main wherewithal. It was that somehow they dug deep and they said, no, we have a purpose, we have something we're going to do, and they pushed through and did it.
Thanks, John. I think on that, I'll stop the recording so people can ask questions freely.
Yeah.
So those of you who are watching on Silicon Beach TV, I'll put John's contact details in the description below, his LinkedIn and all that. You can connect with him and ask questions. So thanks, John.
Good on you, mate. Thanks for coming. Yeah.